This is the Real Influencers Podcast, real influence for real estate agents. Hey, this is Marcus Cora. I am super excited today. We have David Walker on the Real Influencers Podcast. David, it is fantastic to have you here, and I'm going to start off. I can't wait to hear what you've got to share with us. And I wanted to start off by asking you, you're obviously really super successful. What are the pivotal moments from your career that have helped you to create the success that you've created?
Thanks for having me on the show, Marcus. So, in answer to the question, there's probably not one set moment or any pivotal thing necessarily that's happened for me. It's been a process of time in the industry. So I've been in the industry now for 15 years, but I think it's a tale of two careers that I've had in real estate. One was probably the first 10 years of my career where I was probably just more a traditional real estate agent, listing and selling, not doing anything radical or different. I'd teamed up with somebody. We were working side by side, selling our listings together. Then I was probably more a complete change in my life was when I got married, and we were looking at having our first child. And I remember we were in New York, and I just realized, kind of being in that city, there was so much energy, and you realize how small you are when you're in a big city like that. And I remember the moment in Central Park, and I turned to my wife and I said, I'm just sick of sort of playing a mediocre game, and I wanted to kind of really see how far I could push it. So I got back from overseas and had said to my business partner at the time that I wanted to open an office, a business. And he was a bit older than I was, but then wasn't really interested in doing it. So we decided to kind of go our separate ways. And then I moved forward with opening an office with my principal at the time. And from day one, I wanted to set the office up as kind of like the ultimate business setup, and kind of what does a $1 million agent look like? What does everyone else that's writing good numbers, how are they structured? And so from day one, I put the right structure in place. And really from there, that's when my career took off. It was all about putting the right structure and the right people around me.
Awesome. So really quickly, Dave, thank you for sharing, by the way. Really quickly, can you give us an idea of when you talk about the right structure and the right people, what specifically you mean?
Yep. So I realized at that point in time that I was good at the main things, which was listing and selling properties. I had a long, hard look at myself and realized what I wasn't great at and looked at all the things that I probably realized I wasn't going to do on a consistent basis. And by having that honest conversation, I realized that, although I prospected sporadically, it wasn't something that I was going to do on a day-to-day basis or I enjoyed doing. I was good at listing and I was good at selling, so I realized I just needed to get in front of more people. So I employed 2 associates who came on board working underneath me, and their whole job was to get me in the doors of more potential vendors and nurture a database of potential vendors, and worked with them to get me into more doors and in front of more people.
Awesome. Fantastic. So if you were to sort of look at what the secret to your success was or is,
Yep.
What would you put it down to? What's the thing that you would go, do you know what? It's probably going to be this.
I think it comes down to, there's a few different things. So firstly, as we just said, structure. You can't be a consistent performer at a high level unless you're structured with the right people around you. So you could be the best closer in the world, the best lister in the world, but if you're not in front of anyone, you're not going to be listing anything. So if you've got the right structure of people who are there to make up for your flaws and make up for what you don't do that well, and you do the things you do well on a consistent basis, that's the first thing. Second thing was my belief. So in every kind of transaction that I go into, every listing presentation, every sale, I know that I'm the best agent to handle that job. So it's not an arrogance. There's a big difference between belief and arrogance. So we say that belief is the way you look at the way you perceive yourself when no one's looking. Yet arrogance is the way I was having an exaggerated sense of yourself when everyone's looking. So if you've got belief in yourself, you go into different situations in your life, and you know deep down behind all the crap that you kind of put out to the world, you actually truly think that you're the right person for the job. And that comes from a place of, you know, losing a lot of listings, but getting better at listing and selling, and making sure that when you go into a presentation that everything you're doing and saying you truly believe in, and you truly know that you're going to do the best job for that person. So belief's probably the second part of it for me. And finally, I think it's probably being surrounded by the right people, which I know is structure, but also for your headspace. So if your headspace is in a good place, so you're positive and you're surrounding yourself with people you enjoy hanging around with, and you're in a positive frame of mind, I think it's infectious. So I think by having, you know, a positive culture, we've got a no dickheads rule in our business. So if you surround yourself with the right people, then it really does set the tone for the way you plan your day, the way you go out to different appointments, and being in the right headspace.
Awesome. Okay, so I totally agree with everything you've said. I wanted to circle back to beliefs if I could.
Sure, yeah.
And I wanted to use slightly different language, but I think we're talking about the same thing. And I just wanted to qualify whether I'm thinking about it in the same way that you're thinking about it. So I have a theory that as individuals and as businesses, we operate from one of four positions. There's desperate and needy, which I kind of lump together, and there's being the prize, which I think is what you're talking about, and then there's arrogance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you are in those listing presentations and you're talking to those sellers, that belief that you hold about yourself, for me, if I look at what the prize means, I would say that the prize means that you know deep down with every sort of fiber of your body that you can help that person achieve their dream, their goal.
Yep.
Yeah, it's about selling. I can see you nodding. It's about selling their home,
Yep.
but it's actually about them transitioning to the next phase of their life, whatever that happens to be.
Yep.
And I think that certainty, that prize mentality, that mindset of being able to walk into the room and really knowing deep down that you can help them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. But you hit the nail on the head, because you're in there and it's about them. It's not about you. Whereas I think a lot of agents go in, it's all about them, and they've got commission breath because they're thinking about making 20 grand commission, or they're thinking about quick sale, or they're thinking about, I can, you know, sell it to that person really quickly and move on to the next one. Whereas every transaction or every listing you go into, I look at it and think, well, how can I actually do the best job for that person? And I know I'm the best person for that job.
Yeah, I totally agree. Did you, when you were in this transition phase, when you came back from New York and you went, right, I'm going to set up my own office, did you go off and learn from any specific sources to glean information, or did you just kind of have an inherent, I know what I want to do, let's go?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of everything. So I looked at what the top agents were doing, but I think too many of us, we struggle to be critical of ourselves because we don't want to actually open that can of worms. So if you the best thing you could possibly do is to sit down and actually work out what you're not going to do. Yeah. So we all get there, and as an agent in that first period of our careers, we get there going, I'm going to prospect this week, and you do it for a week, but then you get busy and you forget about the next week and the next week. So if you actually can just go, you know what, I'm not going to prospect on a consistent basis. So I'm going to take the risk of employing a person or two people or three people to do that for me. Just do that. So you look at it like a business. It's like if you open a convenience store, but you don't want to spend the money of getting somebody standing there every day at the cash register. Means you have to do it yourself, but that means then you're not going to be setting up, looking at how you can grow the business and things. So, but then also people that don't want to go and buy the inventory for the convenience store because they don't want to spend any money on it, or they don't want to do any marketing for it. Real estate's exactly the same. If you just go out there and you want to be the top agent in your area, but you don't want to spend any money on building a team, or you don't want to spend any money marketing your team, or you don't want to spend any money on training yourself to be a better agent, or reinvesting in yourself to be a better agent. I've spent a lot of time with some of the best trainers in the country, and people like Tom Panos. You get so much so much out of people like that. That is the difference between winning a listing or not winning a listing. I spent hours listening to podcasts, to videos, to all sorts of training DVDs, books, to try and work out how I can be better. But it wasn't actually until I employed people within my team that it meant more, because when I was finding people who were prospecting for business for me, there's nothing harder than walking back into the office and telling them you lost a listing that they'd spent hours working to find you. So it meant I was actually, like when I became a father, all of a sudden it wasn't about me anymore. It's about, it was about my wife and about my children. When you run a business, or even if you don't own the business, but you've got people that are in your team, it's not about you anymore. It's as much about them as it is you, because you don't want to be telling somebody that you've lost them a listing that could have been more commission to them. So you have to be the best agent you possibly can be. You have to meet them in the morning. You have to meet them in the afternoon. You have to have those meetings. So it forces you to actually have more structure around yourself. So it's the quickest way you could possibly 2x, 4x your business, by having team around you, not only because they're doing more for you, but it forces you to be better.
That's such a insightful and brilliant point. Thank you, David. That really is a fantastic point, because in one sense, you've kind of burnt your bridges by having the team. You're committed. I mean, you're not just feeding you and your family anymore. You have a much greater responsibility. That's such a brilliant point. Thank you for sharing. Okay, the next question is really around there are parts of a process. So being an agent is more than just winning the listing. You've got to be a great negotiator. You've got to be a great auctioneer and a great communicator. There are so many facets. Is the one thing that really gets you out of bed excited in the morning? Is it the selling bit? Is it the listing meetings, the auction, the negotiation? What's the bit that really gets you excited?
It actually changes from day to day. So sometimes it's a listing pitch. So I've just won a listing that in our area will be sort of, we call it the cowbell listing. We call it the cowbell listing because it's like everyone in the area will know it's on the market because it's just one of those properties. So that for me was, for this week was kind of the big, I'm so excited to get that on. It sort of reinvigorates you because it's like any job. You can sort of not become stale, but it's sort of day to day, everything sort of is happening and you it just becomes a little bit monotonous. But so sometimes it's a listing presentation or getting into a pretty special property that you really want to get and the hunger sort of comes back. Sometimes it's pulling a deal together that genuinely that if it was another agent that handled it, they wouldn't have been able to think outside the box to get that deal together, or close a buyer that was never going to buy the property, but you feel like you added your value. Or, even 2 weeks ago, I sold for a lovely lady who she would be, late 70s, but her husband passed away a few years ago. She's moving up to Queensland to be with family, and we got her $300,000 more than what she was looking for. So it depends on the stuff, depends on the day-to-day things, but I don't take our job lightly and it's, I'm not trying to say that it's not brain surgery. We're not changing the world or changing anything on a grand scale, but you are at that moment in time changing somebody's life for the better.
Yeah.
So it's every day you are doing things, and if you're doing it with the right attitude and doing it for the right reason, it is actually really on a personal level rewarding. So for me, that's probably what keeps me going and then what excites me every day. But now it's started to change a lot for me as well, because I'm actually getting more pleasure out of seeing people within my team and in my business building their own businesses. And so one of the proudest moments I had last year as a business owner was seeing one of our agents, Anna, who got up and won the Rate My Agent Award for the Rookie of the Year. So I'm starting to see different ways of getting enjoyment out of the business. And it's actually to see them do really well is probably actually more rewarding than anything I do on a day-to-day basis.
That's fascinating. Yep. Can I just come back and quickly ask you? You touched on quite a few things. If there was, I know you haven't got a specific thing with regard to maybe listings negotiation or whatever, but if there was a sort of a nugget, something that you've used in your past that really was dynamite for you? Maybe it was a thought, maybe it was a technique, maybe it was a script, whatever it happens to be, in a context. Can you think of something that's really like that you've kept using that's just worked really, really well over time?
Yeah, look, so one thing I do with every single listing is I don't lock anyone into an agency agreement. So everyone that is on the market with me signs an agency agreement, but I put in there they can get rid of me at any time. I've done that for my whole career, and it's out of anything that I've done, and I'm always changing my listing presentation, changing what I'm saying, always trying to be reinventing things, but that's stayed consistent. And I think that for me has been a huge thing because it says to vendors that I back myself. I'm not just going to be a typical agent who comes in and tells you a high price and then day one tries to get you down in price. So it shows people that I will do what I say I'm going to do because pressure's on me to perform, whereas other agents are going to lock people in for 3 months and after day one of open home, your house is too expensive, even though that's what they told them it was worth a week ago. So just that one thing, I think, shows people the transparency and the genuine nature of how I like to conduct business, and I think makes people comfortable.
I think that's absolutely epic. It's like a guarantee, right? That's what
Yeah.
you're offering in that moment.
Yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant. What a fantastic idea. Thank you for sharing. All right. Really, it could be the last question. We could have one more. The market's changed. We're in a new market again now. We're down in Melbourne, so I know Sydney's different as well again. Where do you see the market going in the next 12 months or 24 months? And what kind of opportunities might there be out there in the future?
I think the last 12 months have probably been the most challenging 12 months of my career, it's been a really interesting journey to go on it because the stock levels are down 30-40% now level in our area. And the stuff that you do get on, the actual clearance rate's gone from it was close to 90-95% of the stuff we took on we sold down to about 60-65%. So it's been great because we had to relearn our craft. We had to go back to the basics. So we had to do everything that I started at my career. I had to go back to doing that because we'd had a pretty good run. I'm sure in Melbourne was the same for the 2, 3, 4 years before that. And we've seen a lot of people come and go out of the industry in our area. So that last 12 months, I think, has set us up brilliantly for the next 12 to 24 months. My take on it is the market's not going to boom or go crazy, but I think we'll probably have a freer kind of trading period with far more liquidity in the market. So I'm hopeful that the market just stays stable. I don't think it'll boom. I don't think it'll bust, but I think we'll just have neutral trading conditions, which probably the best trading conditions you can have because it's sustainable. So, and if that's the case, I think there's huge opportunity for for agents to start showing their points of difference, showing how you can make somebody an extra 100 grand, prove that you are worth the extra 5 to 10% in value from your competitors. In a booming market, even the worst agents can show a scenario of the week before where they got 200 grand over reserve. My 2-year-old son could sell a house in a booming market, but in a neutral market, you can really prove your value. So you've got to make sure as an agent you've got your points of difference. So when you go into your listing presentations, make sure that you aren't just saying the same spiel that the agent before had. You've got to show your value. You've got to give them hope to get a really good price, and you've got to be genuine, and you've got to kind of come up with something to make them feel like they're, in terms of marketing, that you're going out to all these different avenues, so there's no stone left unturned. Because I always say, if a vendor stands back at the end of the process and puts the sold sticker on, they don't want to wonder, what if I had have used that agent who was a little bit more expensive, or I wonder what would have happened if we had have gone into that social media campaign with that other agent. You want to stand back and think, we did it all. We had a massive crack at it, and there was no extra money out there. And I think, with my vendors, I think you get most of them who will say, when they put the sold sticker on, no matter what the result, there was no one out there that would have got a better result than what we could have.
There's so much in that answer that is just brilliant and fantastic. Okay, this really is my final question. What advice would you give agents?
So I guess it doesn't matter whether if you're an experienced agent, then it's probably a different conversation to somebody brand new in the industry. So it's probably a two-part to answer question. So if you're brand new in the industry, what I would say is go and learn as much as possible. Go and see who's doing great things in your area or out of your area within your brand, and go and spend time with them, spend time with their associates, spend time with as many of them as possible. I've got plenty of agents who have come and sort of sat next to me for the day, like new agents to the industry, and you'll be surprised how many top agents would be more than willing to give their time up to help. Because I think once you get to a certain point in your career, you do want to start giving back, and it's not just about taking. So go and try and see how much information you can get. Go and learn your skills. Go and sit next to good agents and find out what their points of difference are, and you'll learn a lot. So that would be what I'd say to a new agent. For an experienced agent, if you're not doing the numbers that you'd like to do, or if you're just plodding along, I'd say two things is work out what you actually want, because if you don't want something, then you're not going to change. If you really want to have a crack in life and you don't want to look back in 10 years' time and just think, what was I doing? Like I was just an absolute waste. I was wasting my time. And you may as well, if you're not earning sort of 70, 80 grand in this industry, you shouldn't be in it. Like, and that's entry level. I'm talking like if you're not earning 80 grand a year, then you may as well go and get a job at Bunnings, working 6 days a week on $40 an hour, because you'll be happier and you'll be less stressed, and you won't have anyone giving you having chats with you about KPIs. But so work out if you actually really want it, and if you really want it, then sit down and have a long hard look at what you're not doing right. And I would say go and invest in getting somebody straight away to work alongside you, because that will make you or force you to either sink or swim. I'd rather see somebody sink but just expedite 5 to 10 years and see them sink, rather than waste 5 to 10 years and just get to the end of that and go, well, that was a waste of time. Mm-hmm. So go and take the risk. As I said, treat it like you're a business owner. Treat it like you're starting up any other business. If you're starting any business, you are going to have to go and spend 100 grand on getting in inventory or getting a shop front or whatever it is. So treat this job like you're starting a business, and go and spend 100 grand employing somebody or employing 2 people who can go and find you more business. And then just make sure you are getting yourselves and your skill up to the level it should be. But then also go out and spend time with people doing it and see what they're doing well. You've got to go out and meet as many people like that as possible, because you can't, these days, real estate is different to what it was 5 years ago. If you're just going to be a one man or woman band, you're going to get swallowed up and spat out very, very quickly. I think in our industry, you said earlier, 35 to 40,000 agents at the moment. My gut feel is in 10 years' time, there'll be 10,000 agents in our industry, but they'll all be super agents. They'll all have teams of probably 15, 20 people in their teams. Like you're seeing in America, you're seeing agents with massive teams selling a lot more properties, because our fees are probably going to get pushed down even further. So rather than selling 50 houses a year, I might sell 300 houses a year. But I've got teams of people around me who are going out there and pushing my brand. And I think that's where our industry is probably going. I think there'll be far less reliance on agents being at inspections, and it will be more around negotiating, doing all the very pointy end stuff. So if you're just an insignificant agent plodding along, writing 100, 200 grand a year, I'd be either looking for a different career, or I'd be looking at how you can change things to stay relevant.
David, that was totally amazing. Thank you so much for your time, your thoughts, your insights, your brilliance, and for sharing what you've shared with us today. Absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, David Walker.